beginning of the burning, Romans 1:16, for I am not ashamed of the gospel. There's something inside these words that burns in me, quietly at first like a whisper behind the heart, but then it grows louder, stronger. Paul is not writing this as just doctrine. He is bleeding with fire, not ink. There's intensity, there's conviction, there's love, and there's weight. And I ask myself, why did he begin like this? I am not ashamed. Why would anyone be ashamed of good news? Why would someone need to declare they aren't ashamed unless there were reasons to be tempted to hide? Unless there were moments when the weight of rejection, the scorn of the religious, or the misunderstanding of the masses would make a man tremble. I sit with this, and as I sit, I realize maybe I've felt it too. Not shame in the worldly sense, but that quiet fear, that pause in the spirit, when speaking about Christ in certain places might cost me something. Cost me approval, respect, connection, opportunity, safety. But Paul, this man of fire, he writes from a place of inner fullness. As much as in me, he said earlier, and now I feel it. This man is bursting with something. The gospel is not a message he memorized, it is a person he embodies. He doesn't preach theory, he breathes Christ. And when he says he is not ashamed, he is revealing the deep inner identity that the gospel has carved into him. It is no longer Paul preaching the gospel. It is Christ in Paul living and speaking. I pause, because I'm not sure I've seen the gospel like that before. So often I've thought of the gospel as a set of truths to defend, or a script to memorize, or a message to present. But for Paul, the gospel was life within. It was union, it was presence, it was Christ himself, formed and overflowing. And that changes everything, because you cannot be ashamed of your own breath. You cannot be ashamed of your heartbeat. If the gospel is who you are becoming, then to speak it is to simply release what's burning inside. For I am not ashamed of the gospel. As I linger longer in this one sentence, I begin to realize Paul wasn't just saying he was brave. This wasn't mere courage, it was oneness. He could not be ashamed because the gospel wasn't outside of him anymore. It was inside him, living, breathing, radiating. He had become one with the message. The message, the gospel, is not a concept. It is not just Jesus died and rose. It is Jesus himself, his very life, nature, and power. So when Paul says, I am not ashamed, he's not just resisting fear, he's testifying to identity, to union, to sonship, and that's when it hits me deeper. I have often thought of the gospel as something to carry, as if I were a delivery person. But Paul sees himself as a living expression of it. The gospel isn't something Paul brings, it's something he is becoming. That's when shame loses its grip. Shame has power only when you're still separated from the truth. But when the truth lives in you, when the light is no longer just something you talk about, but something that illuminates your being, then shame dissolves. And I suddenly see why Paul began with this, because the world will shame you for living this gospel. Religious people will shame you for not fitting into their mold. The intellectual elite will shame you for appearing too simple, too trusting, too foolish. But Paul says, I am not ashamed. Not because he fought off shame with willpower, but because his identity in Christ swallowed it whole. There's no room left in him for shame. The gospel has filled all the space. And the more I think about this, the more I realize I want that. I don't want to just know the gospel, I want to become it. I want it to fill me until I too can say, not with trembling, not with effort, but with fullness, I am not ashamed. Because Christ in me is no longer just a hope. He is the life I now live.